It all started on a quiet, sunny morning in one of the wealthiest neighborhoods of the city, the kind of place where manicured lawns stretched for acres. The cars gleamed like new even under the harsh sunlight, and every corner whispered the story of someone who had money beyond imagination. In the center of it all stood a mansion so grand that even the clouds seemed to pause when they floated past. It was the kind of house that made people stop in awe, not out of curiosity alone, but out of a deep, almost instinctive recognition that wealth of this level came with stories no one could easily imagine. Inside, the household moved with a rhythm that only the very rich know. Quiet footsteps, careful gestures, polite greetings, all underscored by a subtle tension that seemed invisible to outsiders, but was as palpable as the walls themselves. Every member of the staff had their place, their duties clearly defined, and their movements almost choreographed. So much so that you could almost hear the mansion breathe as they went about their morning rituals. Among them was a maid named Clara. Clara was not the type to attract attention. In fact, she thrived in blending into the background, doing her work with a quiet efficiency that made her almost invisible. She had been with the household for 3 years, long enough to know the rhythms, the expectations, and the subtle hierarchies that governed the mansion. But despite her years of service, she remained careful, almost guarded. Her smile was warm but never overextended, her words polite but always measured. She had learned, as many in her position did, that wealth demanded discretion, obedience, and sometimes sacrifices of personal dignity. The billionaire, Mr. Jonathan Pierce, was a man of contrasts. Outwardly, he was the epitome of power, wealth, and control. His tailored suits, the perfectly polished shoes, and the air of command that seemed to follow him wherever he went painted the picture of someone untouchable. Those who knew him well, or thought they did, knew there was a peculiar streak beneath the polished exterior. Jonathan was a man who liked to test people, to see how they would act when the veneer of normality cracked, when situations shifted in ways they could not anticipate. It wasn't cruelty, at least not in the conventional sense. It was curiosity, a fascination with human nature that drove him to explore the boundaries of honesty, loyalty, and morality in the people around him. On this particular morning, Jonathan woke up with a plan that had been forming in his mind for weeks. He wanted to test Clara, not in any harsh or punitive way, but to understand the depth of her character, the honesty of her heart, and the authenticity of her actions when confronted with something entirely unexpected. He had spent hours considering different approaches, scenarios, and possible outcomes. In the end, he decided on a simple yet shocking method. He would pretend to be drunk. Not a little tipsy, not slightly affected, but thoroughly, convincingly intoxicated. He wanted to push the boundaries of Clara's composure, to see whether she would respond with care, judgment. The plan was risky, no doubt. It required precision, subtlety, and a mastery of deception that only someone with his intellect and experience could hope to pull off convincingly. But Jonathan was confident. He had rehearsed every step in his mind, from the way he would stagger, to the slurred tones he would use, to the chaotic disarray he would create in his room to make the scene appear authentic. Clara, meanwhile, was blissfully unaware of the storm that was about to unfold. She had begun her morning duties as usual, preparing breakfast, organizing the house, and making small talk with the other staff members in the soft, respectful manner that kept the household running smoothly. She liked the predictability of these mornings, the rhythm of tasks completed efficiently, and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. Little did she know, this morning would not be ordinary. It would become a test of intuition, loyalty, and empathy that she could not have anticipated. The first sign that something was amiss came subtly. A crash, barely audible but enough to make Clara pause mid-step. Then came the sound of muttered words, incoherent but clearly frustrated, followed by a thud as something heavy hit the floor. Clara's heart skipped a beat, and she instinctively moved toward the source. She found Jonathan lying in the middle of the hallway, clothes rumpled, hair disheveled, and an expression that, for all appearances, was clouded with intoxication. His eyes, glassy and unfocused, barely recognized her presence as she approached. Clara froze for a moment. Her mind raced, calculating the safest response. She had been trained in discretion, in handling emergencies, but this was different. This was personal. The man before her was her employer, a man whose power and influence were absolute, and yet he appeared vulnerable, unguarded, and human in a way she had never seen. There was a temptation, a dangerous curiosity, to see if he might be in need, if this was truly an accident or something more sinister. Clara knew that how she responded in the next moments would define the trajectory of her day, perhaps even the trust between them. Her first instinct was to speak, to ask if he was all right, if he needed help. The words formed in her mouth, but faltered as she noticed the scattered objects around him, a knocked-over vase, an empty glass that might have held alcohol, and a faint smell of something strong that lingered in the air. The scene was convincingly chaotic, the kind of setup that could fool even a careful observer. Clara's mind switched rapidly between caution and compassion. She could ignore it, report it, or step in. Choice carried potential consequences, both immediate and long-term. Choosing the path of empathy, Clara knelt beside Jonathan, her hands steady but her voice soft, careful, and measured. "Sir, are you all right?" she asked, though her tone carried genuine concern. There was a pause, a long, almost unbearable silence, and then Jonathan's eyes flickered, recognition mingling with the clouded confusion of his feigned state. He slurred something incomprehensible, a muttered protest, or perhaps a plea for assistance. Clara interpreted it as best as she could, leaning in to steady him, to guide him to a safer position. As she moved him gently toward a chair, her mind continued to race. She knew that maintaining composure was critical. Any display of panic, judgment, or irritation could escalate the situation, or worse, damage the delicate balance of trust she had cultivated over the years. Her hands were steady, her voice calm, and her actions deliberate, a mixture of training and intuition honed through countless days, navigating the complexities of working in a high-stakes environment. Jonathan, meanwhile, watched her with an intensity he had not expected. Hidden behind the veil of his act, he observed every micro-expression, every gesture, every instinctive choice Clara made. The precision with which she moved, the care in which she spoke, and the unflinching attention to his safety all combined to create a tableau that left him silently evaluating her character. This was exactly what he had hoped to uncover: authenticity. In a world often dominated by superficial interactions and calculated politeness, he wanted to see unfiltered humanity, and in Clara, he was beginning to see glimpses of exactly that. The moments stretched, each second weighted with tension, suspense, and unspoken questions. Clara fetched water, offering it gently while keeping an eye on his reactions. She straightened the disarray around him, replaced the broken objects with careful gestures, and ensured that he was comfortable. Her approach was not theatrical, not dramatic, but grounded in genuine concern, a quiet strength that emanated from her actions rather than words. It was a delicate dance between care and caution, a balance that could easily have tipped in either direction. And then came the moment that would define the morning. Jonathan, still in character, attempted to stand, swaying precariously as if the room itself had become a treacherous terrain. Clara moved to support him immediately, her instincts guiding her actions. She did not scold, she did not question, she simply acted. Her hands steadied him, her voice reassured him, and her presence became an anchor in a situation designed to unmask her. The contrast was striking: chaos and vulnerability on one side, calm and steadfast humanity on the other. It was a study in character, a real-time test of integrity, empathy, and loyalty. Jonathan's mind raced, though his face remained carefully composed in drunken disarray. He had expected hesitation, maybe even judgment, perhaps a glance of annoyance or frustration. But Clara offered none of these. Instead, she provided compassion, presence, and competence, the exact qualities he had hoped to observe. For the first time that morning, he felt a genuine sense of awe, not at her efficiency or obedience, at the authentic humanity she displayed in a moment that could have been easily manipulated or exploited. As the minutes passed, the tension began to dissolve, replaced by a silent understanding. Clara continued her duties with unwavering focus, her actions both practical and instinctive, her demeanor calm yet alert. Every small gesture mattered: adjusting a cushion, pouring a glass of water, speaking softly, guiding carefully. Jonathan's heart, behind the facade of intoxication, began to swell with unspoken admiration. He realized that this test, which he had orchestrated with such careful calculation, had revealed more than he could have anticipated. Clara's character, her integrity, and her compassion were laid bare, shining brightly in contrast to the artifice he had constructed. And then, almost imperceptibly, the moment of revelation arrived. Clara's phone rang, an emergency call from another part of the mansion. Without hesitation, she moved to answer it, coordinating assistance while keeping Jonathan safely supported. Her multitasking, her decisiveness, and her calm under pressure crystallized the portrait Jonathan had been seeking: a person of rare reliability, empathy, and intelligence, who could navigate unexpected crises with grace and composure. By the time the scene had fully played out, Jonathan sat quietly, pretending to regain some semblance of sobriety, though the mask had begun to falter under the weight of his admiration. Clara, unaware of the full scope of the test, continued her tasks as usual, her focus entirely on the needs of the household and the people within it. In that ordinary-appearing morning, extraordinary qualities had emerged, unforced, uncalculated, and undeniable. Clara moved through the mansion with a calm efficiency that seemed almost effortless, but inside, a small ripple of unease had begun to grow. Something about the morning felt off, even though everything seemed normal on the surface. Jonathan, now seated and leaning slightly against the wall, watched her from a distance with a fascination that went beyond mere curiosity. He had expected a reaction, some crack in her composure, but Clara had displayed nothing but poise, a quiet steadiness that unsettled him in the most unexpected way. This was the part of humanity he most wanted to see: authenticity under pressure. And Clara, without even knowing it, was giving him exactly that. As she carried on with her chores, Clara's mind was partly occupied with thoughts of the usual morning schedule. Breakfast needed to be prepared perfectly, rooms needed tidying, and the daily errands awaited. Yet, there was an underlying tension she couldn't quite identify. Jonathan's presence, so different from usual today, cast a subtle shadow over her routine. She glanced toward him occasionally, her instinct to check if he needed anything stronger than usual this morning. He didn't speak, only observing, his expression still a careful mixture of feigned vulnerability and concealed scrutiny. Jonathan decided it was time to escalate the test slightly. He would create a situation that was more unpredictable, one that would challenge Clara's judgment and morality. Rising slowly, he intentionally fumbled with a glass on the counter, letting it slip and shatter dramatically on the floor. The sound echoed through the high, ceilinged halls, startling Clara just enough to elicit a reaction, but not enough to break her composure entirely. She froze for a split second, then moved decisively to clean up the mess, her hands steady and precise. She didn't panic, she didn't complain, and she certainly didn't look for excuses to avoid responsibility. Her eyes, however, flicked toward him briefly, a silent question of concern, and then back to the broken glass as she swept the shards carefully into a dustpan. Jonathan leaned back, impressed despite himself. The scene had been designed to provoke irritation or fear, yet Clara's response was calm, thoughtful, and even empathetic. He could see the care in her movements, the subtle acknowledgement that accidents happen, but responsibility still matters. He realized that this woman's character could not be manipulated by fear or chaos. Instead, it emerged naturally, and in its emergence, revealed qualities he had long admired but rarely encountered. Clara finished cleaning up the broken glass and turned her attention to the living room. Where a vase had toppled over in the commotion, she knelt to lift it carefully, inspecting it for damage. As she did, Jonathan's feigned intoxication led him to make a slightly exaggerated gesture of frustration, slamming his hand gently on the arm of the sofa. Clara flinched briefly, more from surprise than fear, continued her work without hesitation. Her composure, even when faced with seemingly erratic behavior, was flawless. Jonathan began to see the full scope of what he had set in motion, a true measure of integrity, empathy, and patience unfolding before him. To further test her, he decided to introduce a moral dilemma, something subtle yet telling. He left a wallet on the counter, filled with cash and personal items, ensuring Clara would notice it as she moved about the room. The wallet was clearly valuable, both in its contents and in what it represented. A temptation to anyone inclined toward dishonesty. Clara, moving methodically, noticed the wallet and glanced at it briefly. There was no hesitation, no flicker of greed in her eyes. She simply set it aside, continuing with her duties as though it were not even there. Jonathan's eyes widened slightly. This was the moment that confirmed what he had begun to suspect. Clara's honesty was genuine, unforced, and profound. Yet Jonathan knew he had to go further. Observing her, he realized that the test was not just about obedience or calmness. It was about moral judgment, about choices made in moments of uncertainty, about human empathy in its purest form. So he simulated another mishap, this time slightly more dramatic. A small fire started in the kitchen. Nothing dangerous, just a controlled, manageable flare, designed to provoke panic. Clara's reaction was instantaneous. She grabbed a towel, smothered the flames carefully, and ensured that Jonathan was unharmed, all the while maintaining a calm, composed demeanor. Her efficiency and focus under pressure were remarkable, and Jonathan's admiration grew with every second. As the minutes passed, the morning routine of the household began to feel surreal. Jonathan, still maintaining his act, found himself both entertained and astonished by Clara's responses. She had moved through a series of tests he had constructed with almost surgical precision, yet each time she responded with a level of competence and integrity that surpassed even his expectations. He realized that this exercise, designed as a simple test of character, had become something far more revealing, a window into the strength and authenticity of a human being in a way money and power could never replicate. Clara, unaware of the full scope of the test, continued her work, her mind partly occupied with normal tasks, partly aware of a subtle tension that seemed to hover in the mansion's air. She noticed Jonathan's odd behavior, of course, but her instincts told her to approach with caution and care rather than judgment or confrontation. She had learned that in an environment defined by wealth and power, subtle observation often revealed more than direct questioning or interference. Her approach was methodical, deliberate, and empathetic, of practicality and intuition that Jonathan found increasingly fascinating. By late morning, the test had escalated to its most personal point. Jonathan, deciding to reveal the depth of the exercise subtly, pretended to stumble near the staircase, dropping an envelope that contained important documents. Clara reacted immediately, moving to catch him and secure the envelope. Her hands were steady, her voice calm and her demeanor reassuring. She had no idea of the stakes involved, no awareness that every choice she made was being scrutinized for integrity, empathy, and authenticity. Yet her actions spoke volumes, revealing qualities that could not be taught, bought, or manipulated. Jonathan watched her, a mixture of pride, amazement, and silent admiration in his eyes. He realized that what he had initially thought of as a simple experiment had become a profound lesson in human nature. Clara's loyalty, honesty, and composure were remarkable, and in that moment, he understood something he had rarely confronted. Genuine human integrity was a rare and precious thing, far more valuable than any sum of money or any measure of social status. The final phase of the morning's test was subtle but telling. Jonathan feigned a moment of weakness, slumping against a wall, pretending to be disoriented and confused. Clara, without hesitation, moved to his side, offering support and comfort with an authenticity that surprised even him. She did not question his actions, she did not show annoyance or impatience, and she certainly did not seek to exploit the situation. Instead, she acted with genuine care, her every gesture reinforcing the quiet strength of her character. As the test concluded, Jonathan allowed himself a private smile, knowing that he had learned more in a single morning than he had in years of observing people under normal circumstances. Clara, unaware of the depth and purpose of the exercise, continued her duties as usual, her focus entirely on the needs of the household. She had passed a test that could have revealed weakness, opportunism, or disloyalty, but instead revealed strength, empathy, and unwavering integrity. The mansion itself seemed to settle into a quieter rhythm after the morning's chaos. The sun streamed through the windows, casting warm light over the polished floors and elegant furnishings. Jonathan remained seated, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. He realized that wealth and power could buy almost anything, but they could not manufacture the kind of authenticity and empathy that Clara had demonstrated. In a world where so many interactions were transactional, her actions had been purely human, driven by care, responsibility, and an innate sense of morality. Clara, meanwhile, continued her work, unaware of the profound impression she had left on Jonathan. She tidied rooms, prepared meals, and moved through the mansion with the same quiet efficiency that had defined her for years. Yet in every action, she displayed a depth of character that transcended her role, revealing a humanity that could not be measured by status, wealth, or appearances. Jonathan knew that this morning would stay with him for a long time. He had set out to test Clara, to observe her reactions under controlled conditions, and he had been rewarded with something far greater than mere insight into her behavior. He had witnessed integrity in its purest form, a reminder that true character reveals itself not in words or appearances, but in choices made when no one is looking and when the stakes are unseen but profoundly significant. By the time midday arrived, the mansion had returned to its normal rhythm, the echoes of the morning's events fading into memory. Clara moved about her tasks with the same quiet focus, and Jonathan observed her with a newfound respect. He understood now that wealth, power, and status were trivial in comparison to the lessons of human integrity, empathy, and authenticity that had unfolded before him, and in that realization, he felt something he rarely experienced at all, not at the world around him, at the quiet strength of the woman who had passed his test without ever knowing it existed. After the morning's events, the mansion seemed to breathe differently, as if it too had absorbed the tension and released it into the sunlight streaming through the windows. Clara moved with a quiet efficiency, her mind partly occupied with routine chores, partly replaying the subtle oddities of the morning. She could not shake the feeling that something had shifted. Jonathan's behavior had been unusual, more human, more unpredictable, and yet, beneath the apparent chaos, There had been an almost imperceptible pattern, a method hidden in the madness. Clara had learned long ago to trust her instincts, and today they whispered caution. Jonathan, observing her silently from a corner of the grand living room, felt a surge of satisfaction that was difficult to contain. He had designed the test to observe, to uncover, but the depth of her responses exceeded even his expectations. There had been no hesitation, no opportunism, no hint of resentment or fear. Each action, each choice, spoke volumes about her character. In a world often dominated by pretense, superficiality, and self-interest, Clara's authenticity was astonishing. She had passed every challenge, not because she anticipated it, but because her nature demanded honesty, compassion, and integrity. Feeling emboldened by the morning's revelations, Jonathan decided it was time to introduce the next layer of the test. He wanted to observe her response to vulnerability, not just chaos or temptation. He would simulate a personal crisis, one that required empathy, discretion, and immediate problem-solving. Carefully, he arranged a series of small but alarming incidents around the house. A phone left to ring endlessly with an urgent message, an overturned tray of delicate china, and a minor water leak in the guest bathroom. Each scenario was designed to provoke a reaction, not overwhelm, to test her ability to prioritize, respond thoughtfully, and remain calm under pressure. Clara noticed the first anomaly almost immediately. The ringing phone. She glanced toward Jonathan, whose expression was carefully neutral, and then toward the device. Without hesitation, she picked up the call, her voice steady and polite, ready to handle whatever issue had arisen. The caller, evidently a contractor dealing with the house's maintenance, explained a minor but urgent issue that required immediate attention. Clara listened, carefully asked pertinent questions, and calmly relayed instructions to ensure the problem would be resolved efficiently. Even as she spoke, she maintained awareness of her surroundings, noticing the tipped tray and the water leak, silently planning her next steps. Her multitasking was seamless, a testament to years of disciplined practice, yet it also revealed a natural composure and resilience. Jonathan watched her every move, his mind analyzing, his heart unexpectedly moved. He realized that his test had evolved into something more profound than a simple assessment of honesty. It had become a window into her capacity for leadership, problem-solving, and empathy under pressure. Clara's actions were guided not by obligation alone, but by a genuine desire to maintain order, protect the household, and ensure the well-being of those around her. Jonathan felt a rare pang of admiration, a deep, human recognition that could not be quantified by wealth or status. As the morning progressed, Clara addressed each challenge methodically. She dried the spilled water, carefully placed the china back on the tray, and coordinated with the maintenance team to address the leak. All the while, she remained conscious of Jonathan's presence, his subtle cues, and the underlying tension in the household. Yet she never allowed these factors to disrupt her focus. She had learned that composure and discretion were invaluable tools in a household governed by immense wealth and high expectations, and today they were being tested to the fullest. To further explore her character, Jonathan decided to introduce a scenario that required not just practical skill, but emotional intelligence. He feigned a sudden moment of frustration, raising his voice slightly, and slamming a door in apparent anger. Clara paused for a brief moment, recognizing the intensity of the outburst, but she did not respond with fear or irritation. Instead, she approached him cautiously, her voice gentle but firm. "Sir, is everything all right?" she asked, her words measured to convey concern without judgment. The tone was subtle yet impactful, acknowledging the situation while maintaining respect for his dignity. Jonathan, maintaining the act, allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile. Clara's response was exactly what he had hoped to see. empathy tempered by reason, a recognition of human emotion without succumbing to panic or resentment. He observed her as she navigated the delicate balance between addressing his apparent distress and attending to the household duties that demanded her attention. Her ability to manage both spheres simultaneously with calm, unwavering focus was extraordinary. Next, he orchestrated a situation that required her to make an ethical choice. Jonathan placed a small sum of cash in an obvious location where it could be easily taken, intending to test whether she would act with honesty or succumb to temptation. Clara noticed the cash but did not touch it. Instead, she glanced around to ensure no one else had been involved, then carefully placed it out of reach while continuing her work. Jonathan's heart raced with anticipation, and when he realized she had chosen integrity over opportunism, he felt a deep sense of validation. Clara's honesty was not performed. It was instinctive, a reflection of her true character. The morning passed with a series of similar tests, each escalating slightly in complexity and emotional weight. Jonathan introduced scenarios that required quick thinking, moral judgment, and empathetic responses. Clara met each challenge with precision, thoughtfulness, and unwavering composure. Every choice she made reinforced the emerging portrait of a person whose integrity, empathy, and intelligence were extraordinary. Jonathan began to reflect on the rarity of such qualities, acknowledging silently that wealth and power could not manufacture them, no matter how extensive their influence. Clara, for her part, remained unaware of the true nature of the tests. She perceived each incident as part of her duties, approaching every challenge with professionalism, empathy, and care. Her attention to detail, her thoughtful decision-making, and her unflappable demeanor revealed not only competence, but a deep-seated sense of morality and humanity. Jonathan watched, fascinated, realizing that her actions were guided by principles rather than performance, by character rather than expectation. By midday, the mansion had become a stage for subtle revelations. The staff moved with their usual efficiency, but Clara's responses set her apart, drawing Jonathan's attention repeatedly. He reflected on the lessons he had learned in the process. True character could only be observed under pressure, and authenticity emerged most clearly when the stakes were invisible but morally significant. Clara's actions had spoken volumes, providing insights that no conversation, interview, or resume could ever reveal. Jonathan decided it was time for the final act of the morning's experiment. He would create a scenario that combined vulnerability, moral challenge, and practical problem solving in one complex moment. Intentionally, he pretended to stumble down a short flight of stairs, managing to appear injured, but not gravely so. Clara's reaction was immediate. She rushed to his side, carefully assessing his condition, ensuring that he was safe, and coordinating the necessary care. Her movements were fluid, precise, and deliberate, reflecting a combination of instinct, training, and genuine concern. As she attended to him, Jonathan felt an unexpected surge of emotion. The scenario had been designed to test her integrity, empathy, and composure, yet what he observed went beyond any simple measure of character. Clara's actions revealed courage, thoughtfulness, and an intuitive understanding of human vulnerability. She did not question his motives, she did not exhibit irritation, and she certainly did not exploit the situation. Instead, she provided comfort, assistance, and guidance in a manner that was both natural and profoundly human. The moment crystallized everything Jonathan had hoped to uncover. Clara was not merely a competent employee, she was a person of rare integrity, empathy, and insight. Her actions, consistently thoughtful and morally grounded, reflected a depth of character that transcended her position in the household. Jonathan's initial curiosity had evolved into admiration, a recognition of qualities that could not be purchased, taught, or performed. In Clara, he saw authenticity, compassion, and strength embodied in a way that left him quietly awed. By early afternoon, the series of tests had concluded, though Clara remained unaware of their true nature. She continued her duties with the same quiet focus, attending to the mansion's needs and its inhabitants with professionalism and care. Jonathan, observing her, reflected on the lessons of the mornings. Human integrity, empathy, and authenticity were far more valuable than wealth, power, or social status. Clara's responses had provided him with a rare glimpse into the enduring strength of character, a reminder that genuine humanity could shine brightly even in a world dominated by superficiality and pretense. As he sat in the living room, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of contemplation. He realized that the morning had been an extraordinary revelation, not just of Clara's character, but of the human capacity for empathy, honesty, and moral courage. He understood that wealth and status were trivial in comparison to the lessons he had observed in action, subtle but powerful demonstration of authenticity that Clara had provided. In her quiet, methodical, and compassionate responses, he found a reflection of values often overlooked in a world obsessed with power and appearance. Clara, meanwhile, continued her work, unaware of the profound impression she had left. Each task she completed, each challenge she navigated, reinforced the quiet strength of her character. Jonathan's carefully orchestrated scenarios had been met with authenticity, patience, and empathy, qualities that could not be manufactured or rehearsed. The morning had revealed more than he had hoped to observe. It had provided a window into the rare, enduring virtues that define human character in its truest form. By the time lunch approached, the mansion had settled into a quieter rhythm. The sun cast warm light through the large windows, illuminating the carefully arranged furnishings and highlighting the subtle elegance of the home. Clara moved through the space with practiced efficiency, her mind focused yet subtly reflective, unaware of the silent admiration directed toward her. Jonathan knew that what he had witnessed, that morning, would remain with him for a long time, a rare insight into character and integrity that could not be measured in monetary terms or social influence. After lunch, the mansion seemed almost serene, a sharp contrast to the tension and controlled chaos of the morning. The sunlight filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows on the polished floors. Jonathan remained seated in the living room, though he could no longer hide the quiet satisfaction that had settled over him. Watching Clara navigate the household with such competence, empathy, and composure had left a mark deeper than he expected. He realized that no amount of money, influence, or luxury could replicate the strength of genuine character. A truth that he had long known in theory, but had rarely experienced so vividly in practice. Clara, unaware of the full scope of the test, continued her routine. She moved from room to room, adjusting cushions, straightening drapes, and checking the meticulous order of the mansion's interiors. Every action she performed was deliberate, precise, and thoughtful, a testament to her years of experience and innate sense of responsibility. Yet, beneath the calm surface, she remained subtly alert, aware that something about Jonathan's behavior was unusual. There was a tension, a subtle unpredictability in his movements and expressions that made her pay closer attention. Even while she continued her work, Jonathan, leaning back in his chair, reflected on the morning's events. He had orchestrated a series of controlled scenarios to test her integrity, empathy, and composure, and the results had exceeded even his highest expectations. Clara had met every challenge without hesitation, judgment, or opportunism. Her actions revealed a quiet strength, a moral clarity, and an authentic concern for others that he found increasingly rare in the world around him. Wealth and influence had taught him many things, but nothing had prepared him for the depth of admiration he now felt. To further probe her character, Jonathan decided to create a scenario that combined emotional challenge with moral decision-making. He called out from the living room, pretending to be in distress, claiming that he had accidentally damaged an important family heirloom in his apparent intoxication. Clara's reaction was instantaneous. She rushed to his side, her voice calm yet filled with concern. "Sir, what happened? Are you hurt?" she asked, her eyes scanning the room for evidence of the alleged accident. Her movements were careful, deliberate, and guided by instinct, reflecting a balance of empathy and rational judgment. Jonathan allowed the scene to unfold, observing her response carefully. Clara examined the object in question, a delicate antique vase, without a hint of accusation or irritation. She handled it gently, checking for damage, and then looked back at him, her expression a mixture of concern and composed curiosity. "It seems intact," she said, her voice steady. "But perhaps we should ensure everything else in the room is safe." Her suggestion was practical, thoughtful, and devoid of judgment, revealing a character that prioritized care and problem-solving over blame or self-interest. Encouraged by her reaction, Jonathan decided to escalate the challenge slightly. He feigned a moment of clumsiness, knocking over a small pile of papers and a decorative lamp, creating a scene that appeared chaotic and slightly hazardous. Clara's response was immediate. She moved swiftly to secure the fallen objects, ensuring no harm would come to anyone, including him. Her focus was unwavering, and her calm demeanor provided a striking contrast to the apparent disorder around her. Jonathan's admiration deepened. He realized that her actions were not motivated by obligation or fear, by genuine empathy and responsibility. To introduce a moral element, Jonathan intentionally left a significant amount of cash on a nearby table, subtly within Clara's reach, knowing that temptation would test her integrity. Clara noticed it but did not touch it. Instead, she glanced briefly, then carefully placed it out of sight while continuing her tasks. Her decision was instinctive, unforced, and morally sound. Jonathan, watching silently, felt a rare sense of awe. Clara's honesty, composure, and empathy were not performances. They were intrinsic qualities, emerging naturally in situations designed to reveal character. The afternoon continued with a series of small yet revealing challenges. Jonathan created minor emergencies, from a deliberately overturned chair to a fictitious urgent phone call about household maintenance. Clara responded to each with efficiency, empathy, and quiet decisiveness. Every action demonstrated her ability to manage chaos, prioritize safety, and make morally sound choices. Jonathan observed her closely, noting the balance of practicality and emotional intelligence in every gesture, every word, and every decision. It was a demonstration of character that left him both impressed and humbled. At one point, Jonathan pretended to stumble while walking across the hall, catching himself precariously against a wall. Clara immediately moved to support him, her hands steady, her voice calm and reassuring. "Sir, please be careful," she said, her words infused with genuine concern. Her reaction was instinctive and thoughtful, reflecting a deep understanding of human vulnerability and responsibility. Jonathan felt a profound respect for her composure and empathy. She had navigated the morning's staged chaos with grace, revealing an authenticity that could not be faked or taught. The mansion itself seemed to respond to the intensity of the morning's events. The air, once heavy with tension, now carried a subtle warmth, a reflection of the careful balance Clara maintained in her duties. Jonathan realized that the morning had not only tested her character, but also provided him with insights into the nature of human integrity and empathy. Clara's responses were consistently thoughtful, morally grounded, and emotionally intelligent, revealing a depth of character that transcended her role in the household. To further explore her instincts, Jonathan created a situation that required prioritization under pressure. He staged a minor spill in the kitchen, accompanied by a small fire in a nearby pan. Clara's reaction was immediate and precise. She moved to extinguish the fire, ensuring safety while simultaneously addressing the spill. Her multitasking, her calm demeanor, and her careful attention to detail highlighted not just her competence, her ability to navigate high-pressure situations with moral clarity and empathy. Jonathan observed silently, deeply impressed by the seamless integration of practical skill and ethical decision-making in her actions. As the afternoon progressed, Jonathan decided to test her patience and composure further. He pretended to lose his temper over a minor issue, raising his voice slightly and displaying what appeared to be frustration. Clara, rather than reacting with fear, irritation, or confrontation, approached the situation with calm empathy. She spoke softly, addressed the perceived problem with practical solutions, and maintained her composure throughout. Her response revealed a rare blend of patience, emotional intelligence, and integrity, qualities that left Jonathan both astonished and profoundly respectful. At one point, Clara needed to make a difficult choice. Jonathan deliberately left an important personal item in a place where it could be misused, observing whether she would prioritize honesty or opportunism. Clara's reaction was immediate. She secured the item carefully, ensuring its safety, and continued her tasks without hesitation or comment. Her actions demonstrated an instinctive commitment to integrity, a reflection of character that was unwavering even under scrutiny. Jonathan realized that these qualities were not performative. They were inherent, emerging naturally in moments of challenge and decision. By late afternoon, the morning's experiments had culminated in a subtle yet powerful revelation. Jonathan, still maintaining his act of vulnerability and intoxication, observed Clara as she moved through the mansion with calm efficiency, addressing minor crises, ensuring safety, and demonstrating unwavering empathy. Her actions reflected not just competence, but a profound sense of responsibility, integrity, and moral clarity. Jonathan, sitting quietly, felt a sense of admiration and awe that he rarely experienced in his dealings with others. Clara had revealed something extraordinary, the capacity for genuine human goodness in a world often dominated by pretense and self-interest. As the day drew to a close, Jonathan allowed himself a moment of reflection. He had designed the morning and afternoon with meticulous care, creating scenarios to test honesty, empathy, composure, and moral judgment. Clara had met every challenge with remarkable consistency, revealing a depth of character that transcended her position in the household. Jonathan realized that the lessons he had observed were far more valuable than wealth, power, or status. They were lessons in humanity, integrity, and empathy, qualities that could not be purchased, coerced, or performed. Clara, unaware of the full scope of the test, continued her work, attending to the mansion's needs and its inhabitants with unwavering professionalism and care. Jonathan knew that what he had witnessed that day would remain with him for a long time, a rare insight into the enduring strength of human character. He reflected on the rarity of such qualities and the profound impact they could have on the people and the world around them. In Clara, he had found a living embodiment of integrity, empathy, and composure, qualities that, in his experience, were both precious and uncommon. By evening, the mansion had returned to its usual rhythm, the sun casting long shadows over the elegant interiors. Clara completed her final tasks for the day, her mind partially occupied with routine thoughts, partially aware of the unusual nature of the morning and afternoon. Jonathan, observing her quietly, realized that the test had achieved far more than he had initially intended. It had revealed not only the depth of her character, but also provided a reflection on the importance of authenticity, moral clarity, and empathy in human interactions. As evening settled over the mansion, the golden light from the windows highlighted every detail of the grand interiors, from the polished marble floors to the intricate moldings along the ceilings. Clara moved gracefully through the rooms, attending to her final tasks of the day. She had cleaned, organized, and managed countless small crises throughout the day, yet her composure never wavered. Even as fatigue began to creep in, her focus remained sharp, her movements deliberate, and her expressions calm. She had no idea that every action, every decision, and every choice she had made that day had been observed and analyzed with meticulous attention by Jonathan Pierce. Jonathan remained seated in the living room, reflecting on the events that had unfolded. He realized that the day had been far more revealing than he had initially anticipated. His experiment, designed to test Clara's honesty, empathy, and composure, had evolved into a profound study of human character. Each scenario he had staged, from feigned intoxication to minor crises and moral temptations, had been met with integrity, calm, and thoughtful decision-making. Clara had navigated every challenge effortlessly, revealing qualities that were rare, authentic, and deeply admirable. Deciding to observe one final interaction before revealing the truth, Jonathan intentionally created a small challenge that combined all the elements he had been testing: vulnerability, moral choice, and practical problem solving. He pretended to misplace an important family document, a delicate piece of paperwork that could have been easily lost or misused. Clara noticed immediately, her eyes narrowing slightly as she assessed the situation. Without hesitation, she moved to secure the document, ensuring that it was safe while continuing her work. Her actions were precise, careful, and guided by both instinct and ethics. Jonathan's admiration grew. She had once again demonstrated integrity without a hint of hesitation. To further evaluate her empathy, Jonathan pretended to struggle with minor physical discomfort, leaning on a nearby piece of furniture for support. Clara immediately approached, her voice gentle and concerned. "Sir, are you feeling unwell? Should I get something to help you?" she asked. Her tone was neither condescending nor overly familiar. It was respectful, thoughtful, and infused with genuine concern. Jonathan was struck by the subtlety of her response. Clara's ability to recognize vulnerability, respond with compassion, and maintain professionalism was exceptional. She had demonstrated that true empathy could coexist with discipline, intelligence, and efficiency. As the evening continued, Jonathan decided to reflect internally on the broader significance of the day. He realized that his test had uncovered more than just Clara's character. It had provided a profound reminder about the nature of human behavior under pressure. People often reveal their true selves in moments of challenge, when circumstances are unexpected, and when moral or ethical choices must be made swiftly. Clara's responses had consistently aligned with integrity, empathy, and composure, confirming that her character was genuine, resilient, and deeply admirable. Clara, completely unaware of the psychological experiment she had been subjected to, continued her duties as if nothing were unusual. She organized the study, prepared refreshments for the family, and ensured that the household's evening routine proceeded smoothly. Jonathan observed every detail, from the subtle way she arranged objects to the careful tone of her voice when speaking to him. Her presence brought order, calm, and a quiet dignity to the mansion, transforming the space into more than just a home. It had become a living demonstration of human integrity and moral clarity. Wanting to introduce a final moral test, Jonathan staged a minor ethical dilemma. He placed a small but valuable item on a side table, subtly within Clara's reach, to see if she would act with honesty or opportunism. Clara noticed the item, her eyes briefly reflecting recognition of its value, yet she did not touch it. Instead, she secured it in a safe location, ensuring its preservation while continuing her work. Jonathan's satisfaction was nearly tangible. She had again demonstrated that her integrity was instinctive and unassailable. The pattern was clear: honesty, empathy, and composure were deeply ingrained in her character, emerging naturally in every scenario. As night approached, the mansion quieted further. The staff had finished their daily routines, and Clara took a moment to pause. Reflecting on the events of the day, she had noticed subtle oddities in Jonathan's behavior, but she had not questioned them overtly. Instead, she had relied on instinct, careful observation, and empathy to navigate an unusual day filled with challenges and surprises. Her internal sense of responsibility and moral clarity guided every choice, reinforcing her innate ability to act with integrity under scrutiny. Jonathan, now ready to conclude the day's observations, reflected on the lessons learned. The morning and afternoon had been a carefully orchestrated series of scenarios designed to test character, integrity, and empathy. Clara had responded to each with remarkable consistency, revealing a depth of humanity that transcended her role as a maid. Jonathan recognized that such qualities were rare and precious, often overlooked in a world obsessed with status, wealth, and superficial appearances. Her actions had provided a living example of virtue, moral clarity, and authentic empathy, leaving an impression that would last far longer than the morning's staged events. To conclude the day's experiment, Jonathan decided to subtly reveal his awareness without fully exposing the purpose of his test. He expressed gratitude for Clara's work, praising her efficiency, thoughtfulness, and composure throughout the day. Clara, slightly surprised by the unexpected acknowledgement, responded politely, maintaining her humility and grace. Her reactions remained authentic and composed, reinforcing Jonathan's admiration for her character. He realized that recognition, when delivered thoughtfully, could highlight the qualities he had observed while maintaining the integrity of her actions. Jonathan reflected on the contrast between wealth and human virtue. The mansion, with all its grandeur, opulence, and luxury, had provided the setting for an unexpected revelation that character, integrity, and empathy could not be purchased or simulated. Clara's actions, performed instinctively and without expectation of reward, demonstrated the enduring value of authentic human behavior. Jonathan felt a deep respect for her composure, moral clarity, and emotional intelligence, qualities that transcended the superficial markers of status and power that often dominated his world. As night deepened, the mansion settled into a peaceful rhythm. Clara continued her duties, preparing for the following day, while Jonathan sat quietly, reflecting on the remarkable observations he had made. The test had been more than a series of orchestrated scenarios. It had been a window into the enduring strength of human character, a reminder that empathy, integrity, and composure could shine even in the most challenging circumstances. Jonathan felt a rare sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had witnessed something profoundly valuable, a living testament to the power of authenticity and moral clarity. The day concluded with a subtle but powerful realization. Jonathan recognized that Clara's responses had provided more insight than any formal assessment, interview, or evaluation could have revealed. Her actions were instinctive, grounded in ethical principles, and guided by genuine empathy. In a world dominated by appearances and performance, her authenticity was extraordinary. Jonathan felt both admiration and gratitude for having had the opportunity to observe such rare qualities firsthand, a reminder that true human virtue could exist even amidst wealth, power, and expectation. By late evening, the mansion was quiet, the soft glow of lamps illuminating the interiors. Clara completed her final tasks and prepared for the night, unaware of the profound impression she had left. Jonathan reflected on the lessons learned. Authenticity, integrity, and empathy were qualities that could not be manufactured, coerced, or bought. Clara had demonstrated these traits consistently, calmly, and thoughtfully, revealing the enduring strength of character that Jonathan had sought to observe. The experiment had not only confirmed her remarkable qualities, but also served as a testament to the power of human virtue. Jonathan realized that the day had achieved far more than he had initially intended. Clara's responses had provided a window into moral clarity, emotional intelligence, and ethical behavior under pressure. He felt a deep sense of awe at her ability to navigate challenges with composure, empathy, and integrity. In Clara, he had witnessed the rare convergence of skill, intelligence, and genuine humanity, a combination that left a lasting impression. Experience reinforced his belief that wealth and power were secondary to the enduring value of authentic character, a truth he would carry forward in all his dealings. As night enveloped the mansion, Jonathan prepared to conclude the day's reflections. Clara's actions, observed throughout the morning and afternoon, had revealed a remarkable consistency in moral judgment, empathy, and composure. Jonathan understood that these qualities were not performative but intrinsic, emerging naturally in moments of challenge, uncertainty, and ethical decision-making. The day had provided him with a rare insight into the enduring strength of human character, a lesson that could not be measured in monetary terms or social influence. The mansion had settled into a quiet rhythm as night deepened, yet Jonathan remained alert, observing Clara with a renewed sense of fascination. The test had already revealed much about her integrity, empathy, and composure, but he sensed there was more to discover. He wanted to see how she would respond to subtle personal pressure, moments that might challenge not just her skills, but her instincts, patience, and understanding of human behavior. The day had been orchestrated with precision, yet the final moments promised an even deeper insight into her character. Clara moved through the halls, her steps quiet on the polished floors, attending to minor details that ensured the mansion remained orderly. She straightened a stack of books in the library, adjusted the placement of decorative items in the drawing room, and checked that all doors and windows were secured for the night. Each action was performed with the same calm efficiency that had defined her all day, yet there was a quiet awareness in her demeanor, subtle alertness that suggested she sensed Jonathan's scrutiny. Though she did not yet know the full extent of the experiment, her instincts told her that today had been unusual. She trusted her intuition, a quality that had guided her through years of navigating the complex dynamics of the household. Jonathan decided to introduce one final scenario, designed to probe her judgment and empathy on an emotional level. He feigned a personal crisis, claiming that a valuable family heirloom had been misplaced or damaged during the day. Clara's reaction was immediate. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed in focus as she assessed the situation. Without hesitation, she moved to investigate, her voice calm and measured. "Sir, let's see if we can find it together," she said. Her words were gentle, respectful, and infused with concern, reflecting both her empathy and her ability to approach problems thoughtfully. Jonathan observed her closely, noting the precision and care in her movements. She examined the surrounding areas with meticulous attention, handling objects delicately and ensuring that nothing else would be harmed. Her response was neither reactive nor judgmental. It was grounded in practical problem-solving and guided by an instinctive sense of responsibility. Jonathan felt a surge of admiration. Clara had demonstrated an extraordinary ability to manage emotionally charged situations while maintaining composure and ethical clarity. A rare combination of skills and character traits. To further test her composure, Jonathan introduced a small moral dilemma. He subtly suggested that the heirloom might be found in a room that belonged to another staff member, implying a potential ethical decision: would she prioritize honesty or take the easier path of concealment? Clara's response was instinctive and principled. She did not hesitate, she did not attempt to avoid responsibility, and she certainly did not exploit the situation. Instead, she approached the challenge methodically, ensuring that any actions taken were respectful, transparent, and ethical. Jonathan felt a deep sense of validation. Her integrity was consistent, unwavering and genuine. As she continued her search, Clara noticed small anomalies that Jonathan had subtly introduced: a misplaced cushion, a slightly ajar window, and minor disruptions in the arrangement of personal items. Each observation triggered her critical thinking, but she never allowed frustration or impatience to emerge. Her responses were guided by logic, empathy, and an acute awareness of human relationships. Jonathan realized that her ability to navigate complexity with moral clarity was remarkable. She combined intelligence, emotional insight, and ethical grounding in a way that few people could match. The test also revealed Clara's resilience under pressure. Jonathan intentionally created minor distractions, including a faint alarm sound from the security system and the distant clatter of an object falling in another room. Clara acknowledged each disturbance, addressing it calmly without losing focus on her primary task. Her capacity to prioritize, multitask, and maintain composure highlighted an exceptional level of emotional intelligence and practical skill. Jonathan observed silently, marveling at how effortlessly she balanced competing demands without compromising her principles or demeanor. Jonathan, still maintaining the facade of vulnerability, watched her with a mixture of amusement and admiration. He realized that his initial curiosity had evolved into a profound appreciation for Clara's character. She was not only competent and ethical, but also deeply empathetic, able to navigate human complexity with grace. The morning and afternoon had revealed much about her practical skills. These final moments illuminated the depth of her moral and emotional intelligence. To introduce a subtle twist, Jonathan decided to simulate a situation requiring trust. He pretended to be uncertain about the heirloom's location, leaving vague hints and misleading clues. Clara's response was measured. She asked clarifying questions, verified information carefully, and proceeded cautiously, ensuring that her decisions were based on facts rather than assumptions. Her approach reflected a balance of skepticism and trust, demonstrating critical thinking, integrity, and ethical judgment. Jonathan noted every detail, recognizing that her ability to navigate uncertainty with composure and honesty was extraordinary. As the evening progressed, Clara successfully located the heirloom, handling it with care and restoring it to its proper place. She ensured that no additional damage occurred and maintained a calm, respectful demeanor throughout the process. Jonathan, watching intently, felt a profound sense of satisfaction. The culmination of the day's events had revealed a consistent pattern. Clara's integrity, empathy, and composure were inherent qualities, expressed naturally and reliably even under unpredictable, morally challenging circumstances. Jonathan reflected on the broader lessons of the day. Wealth and power, he realized, create illusions of control, influence, and dominance, yet they could not manufacture authenticity, empathy, or moral clarity. Clara had demonstrated qualities that transcended social status, role, and expectation. Her actions were guided not by fear, obligation, or self-interest, but by a genuine understanding of ethical principles and human care. In observing her, Jonathan was reminded of the enduring value of human virtue and the profound impact it could have in even the most structured, hierarchical environments. To ensure that Clara's emotional intelligence and empathy were fully tested, Jonathan simulated a final moment of vulnerability. He pretended to experience a minor emotional breakdown, expressing frustration and disappointment over a fabricated personal challenge. Clara's response was immediate and compassionate. She approached him gently, her voice calm and soothing. "Sir, it's all right. Let's handle this together," she said, her tone conveying understanding, reassurance, and respect. Her actions reflected a combination of empathy, practical problem-solving, and ethical guidance, reinforcing Jonathan's growing admiration. The final moments of the evening allowed Jonathan to reflect on the entirety of the day's observations. He had orchestrated an extensive, controlled experiment designed to test honesty, integrity, empathy, and composure under pressure. Clara had navigated every scenario with remarkable consistency, demonstrating qualities that were rare, authentic, and deeply admirable. Jonathan realized that these traits could not be replicated through training or manipulation. They were intrinsic, emerging naturally in moments of moral and emotional significance. Clara, unaware of the full extent of the test, continued her duties with quiet diligence. She prepared for the night, ensured that the mansion's interiors were orderly, and attended to minor tasks with calm precision. Jonathan observed her silently, reflecting on the extraordinary character she had revealed. Each decision, each action, and each response provided insights into her integrity, moral clarity, and emotional intelligence. The day had not only revealed her remarkable qualities, but also reinforced fundamental truths about human behavior, virtue, and authenticity. As night fell completely, Jonathan finally allowed himself to acknowledge the full impact of what he had witnessed. Clara's consistent demonstration of honesty, empathy, composure, and moral judgment had left a profound impression. Her ability to navigate challenges thoughtfully, prioritize ethical decision-making, and maintain calm in the face of unpredictability was extraordinary. Jonathan understood that wealth, power, and influence could not replicate or replace the value of authentic human virtue, and he felt gratitude for having observed it firsthand. Jonathan decided it was time to reveal the truth subtly, without diminishing the natural authenticity of Clara's behavior. He expressed sincere gratitude for her work throughout the day, praising her composure, thoughtfulness, and empathy. Clara, slightly surprised by the unexpected acknowledgement, responded with humility, maintaining her grace and professionalism. Her reactions remained authentic, reinforcing Jonathan's admiration and respect. He realized that the lessons of the day were not merely about her capabilities, but about the enduring importance of character, empathy, and integrity in human interactions. By the end of the evening, the mansion had returned to a quiet, peaceful state. Clara completed her final tasks, unaware of the profound impression she had left on Jonathan. The day's events had revealed rare qualities of character that transcended role, status, and expectation, qualities that could not be taught, performed, or purchased. Jonathan reflected on the enduring significance of these observations, recognizing that true human virtue, integrity, empathy, and composure was the most valuable asset he could encounter. The mansion was bathed in the soft glow of evening lights, air carrying a quiet stillness that contrasted sharply with the chaos of the earlier day. Jonathan remained in the living room, reflecting on everything he had observed. He had meticulously orchestrated scenarios to test Clara, her honesty, her empathy, her composure, her moral judgment. But what he saw was far beyond anything he could have predicted. Every challenge he had introduced had been met not with hesitation or fear, but with a combination of intelligence, careful observation, and genuine care that left him awestruck. Clara moved calmly through the mansion, her hands tending to small tasks, her eyes scanning each corner with measured attention. She had noticed Jonathan's earlier odd behaviors, from the feigned intoxication to the orchestrated accidents, but she had never faltered. Instead, she relied on instinct, her training, and a strong sense of personal ethics to navigate the day's unusual events. Even as she tidied the rooms, organized items, and ensured the household's order, she remained quietly reflective. Something about the day had felt different, more layered, more demanding, but she trusted her instincts and responded with grace. Jonathan, observing her, felt a complex mixture of admiration and curiosity. He realized that what had begun as a simple experiment to test her character had evolved into a profound lesson on human integrity and empathy. Clara's composure under pressure, her consistent adherence to ethical behavior, and her genuine concern for those around her painted a portrait of someone rare and invaluable. In a world often defined by pretense, self-interest, and appearances, she stood out as a living example of authentic virtue. To further deepen the insights of the day, Jonathan introduced a subtle emotional nuance into the scenario. He feigned a moment of emotional vulnerability, suggesting disappointment and regret over a trivial mishap earlier in the day. Clara's response was immediate and instinctive. She approached him gently, her voice calm yet imbued with sincerity. "Sir, it's okay. Mistakes happen. We can fix this together," she said. The words were simple, but their impact was profound. She demonstrated empathy without judgment, composure without condescension, and a willingness to offer support without expectation. Jonathan was moved in a way he had not anticipated, recognizing the depth of her emotional intelligence. The test had revealed a striking pattern. Clara's integrity and empathy were unwavering, her composure consistent, her judgment sound. Each challenge, no matter how complex or morally nuanced, had been met with careful thought, ethical consideration, and genuine concern. Jonathan marveled at her ability to navigate uncertainty with grace, balancing practical problem-solving with emotional sensitivity. Her actions were authentic, uncalculated, and deeply human. A living lesson in the power of character over circumstance. Jonathan decided to allow the final moments of observation to unfold naturally, without introducing any new tests. He wanted to see how Clara would behave in the absence of explicit challenges. Relying solely on her judgment and instincts, she moved through the mansion with quiet purpose, ensuring that the evening's tasks were completed efficiently and carefully. Even in routine actions, there was evidence of her integrity and thoughtfulness. Every gesture, every decision, and every glance reflected the lessons of the day: empathy, honesty, composure, and moral clarity. As Jonathan continued to watch, he felt a profound sense of clarity about the purpose and value of his experiment. Wealth, influence, and social status could command attention, enforce behavior, and create appearances, but they could not replicate authenticity. Clara had demonstrated that true virtue emerges naturally, even under pressure, in moments where the stakes are unseen but morally significant. Her consistent choices, her ethical actions, and her genuine care for others had provided him with insights that no sum of money, training program, or authority could achieve. Clara approached Jonathan one final time, ensuring that the heirloom, the household, and the environment were all in order. She spoke with calm authority, offering assistance with any remaining tasks while maintaining a composed demeanor. Jonathan, still seated, observed her closely. He realized that the day had revealed not just her capabilities, but the very essence of her character. Her integrity, empathy, and composure were intrinsic, emerging instinctively and reliably in response to every challenge. It was a rare combination that few possessed, and even fewer displayed so consistently. Finally, Jonathan decided the time had come to subtly acknowledge the truth of his observations. He expressed sincere gratitude for her work throughout the day, praising her composure, efficiency, and empathy. Clara, surprised by the unexpected recognition, responded with humility and grace. Her reactions remained authentic, reinforcing the admiration he had felt throughout the day. Jonathan reflected on the broader lessons that human virtue, honesty, empathy, composure, and moral clarity was far more valuable than wealth, power, or social standing. Clara had demonstrated these qualities effortlessly, instinctively, and beautifully. The mansion, now quiet under the soft night sky, seemed almost alive with the unspoken acknowledgement of the day's revelations. Jonathan understood that this carefully orchestrated series of events had provided insights not only into Clara's character, but into the enduring value of authenticity and moral integrity. Contrasts he had created, the chaos of the staged accidents versus her calm composure, his feigned vulnerability versus her empathy, temptations versus her honesty, had illuminated the rare qualities that defined her. These were qualities that could not be purchased, forced, or performed, only demonstrated through genuine action. Clara finished her final tasks, her mind reflecting subtly on the unusual nature of the day. She had navigated challenges she did not fully understand, responded to crises without hesitation, and maintained an ethical standard that required no instruction or oversight. Jonathan observed her, noting how her calm and thoughtful behavior illuminated the room, transforming ordinary tasks into a living demonstration of integrity, empathy, and composure. He realized that her actions had provided a profound reminder of the strength and value of human character in a way that money, influence, and status could never replicate. Jonathan felt an unexpected sense of relief and fulfillment. The day had been a meticulously planned test, designed to probe the limits of human behavior, yet it had produced insights far richer and more meaningful than anticipated. Clara had navigated every scenario with remarkable consistency, balancing practical skill, emotional intelligence, and ethical judgment. Her actions had revealed qualities that were rare, authentic, deeply admirable, a reminder that true virtue shines brightest when it is unobserved, unforced, and tested under real conditions. As the final hours of the night approached, Jonathan reflected on the overarching themes of the day. The contrast between wealth and moral character, chaos and composure, vulnerability and empathy had highlighted the profound nature of Clara's integrity. Her responses had consistently demonstrated that human virtue is most clearly revealed in moments of unpredictability, moral choice, and ethical challenge. Jonathan understood that her behavior was not influenced by the incentives of status, reward, or recognition, by intrinsic principles that guided her actions instinctively. Clara, finishing her last tasks, paused briefly to reflect. She had managed the day's unusual events with composure and integrity, guided by careful judgment, empathy, and moral clarity. While she had noticed subtle inconsistencies and unusual behaviors from Jonathan, she had remained focused on her responsibilities, her actions reflecting authenticity rather than performance. Her calm, thoughtful approach had successfully navigated the challenges presented to her, revealing the qualities that Jonathan had sought to observe. Jonathan allowed himself one last moment of reflection. He understood that the day had been more than a test. It had been a revelation. Clara's integrity, empathy, and composure had been consistently demonstrated under conditions that would have tested most individuals to their limits. Her ability to navigate uncertainty, moral complexity, and emotional pressure with such consistency was extraordinary. Jonathan realized that the lessons he had learned from observing her would remain with him for a lifetime. That true character cannot be simulated, bought, or imposed. It emerges naturally through choices, actions, and integrity. Finally, Jonathan stood, approaching Clara with genuine warmth and admiration. He expressed heartfelt gratitude for her unwavering dedication, composure, and integrity throughout the day. Clara, surprised by the praise, responded with humility and grace, maintaining the authenticity that had defined her actions from the very beginning. In this quiet exchange, final truth of the day became clear. Human virtue, integrity, empathy, and composure is rare, priceless, and undeniable when demonstrated authentically. As night deepened over the mansion, the quiet settled like a blanket over every corner of the grand estate. Jonathan stood by the large windows, looking out over the illuminated gardens and fountains, reflecting on the day's events. It had been an experiment of subtlety, patience, and observation, yet it had revealed far more than he could have anticipated. Clara's character had shown through in every interaction, every choice, and every small gesture she had made throughout the day. He realized, with a sense of awe, that wealth, power, and status could command attention, but they could never manufacture integrity, empathy, or composure. Those qualities existed naturally, intrinsically, and Clara embodied them in ways that were rare and remarkable. Clara moved through the mansion one last time, checking that all tasks were complete and that everything was in order for the night. Her actions were methodical, her mind quietly attentive, yet her heart carried a sense of calm satisfaction. She had managed the day's events without knowing the true nature of the challenges placed before her, yet she had consistently responded with intelligence, integrity, and empathy. Even in the face of apparent chaos, moral dilemmas, and moments of unpredictability, she had maintained composure and clarity, guided by instinct and principle. Jonathan had observed everything, and with each passing hour, he felt admiration grow stronger. For Jonathan, the culmination of the day was not just the successful execution of his test. It was the profound reminder of what authentic human character looked like. Wealth could buy comfort, influence, and even loyalty to a degree, but it could not create virtue. Clara's honesty, her calm under pressure, her thoughtful judgment, and her empathetic responses had demonstrated the kind of integrity that was rare in any context, regardless of social class or environment. Watching her work, Jonathan felt a mixture of respect, relief, and a deep, almost overwhelming sense of wonder at the consistency and depth of her character. He decided to speak to her one final time, not as an employer testing an employee, but as someone who had been quietly transformed by what he had witnessed. "Clara," he began, his voice calm yet filled with warmth. "Today has shown me something I rarely encounter, not just your skill or efficiency, but your character. The way you handle challenges, your integrity, your empathy. It's remarkable. I need you to know that it hasn't gone unnoticed." Clara paused, slightly startled by the unexpected acknowledgement. She met his gaze, noticing the sincerity in his eyes, the quiet gravity of his tone. For a brief moment, the usual professional boundaries seemed to dissolve, replaced by a shared recognition of the day's extraordinary events. Clara replied humbly, "Thank you, sir. I just try to do what's right, to take care of the house and everyone in it. That's all I can do." Jonathan smiled, a rare, genuine smile that spoke of admiration and respect rather than authority or control. "What you've done today goes beyond on duty. It's not just about completing tasks or managing responsibilities. It's about who you are. Your integrity, your empathy, your composure. They're qualities that cannot be taught or bought. They're rare, and today, you've proven just how extraordinary they are." Clara's expression softened, a subtle warmth crossing her face. She nodded, feeling the weight of his words. Though she remained humble, she had acted instinctively throughout the day, guided by principle and human decency, never seeking recognition or reward. Yet now, she realized that her actions had left a lasting impression, not through performance or obligation, because they reflected her true character. Jonathan felt a sense of closure, knowing that his carefully designed test had succeeded in ways he could never have predicted. Clara had navigated every challenge with grace, honesty, and intelligence, revealing a depth of human virtue that left him profoundly moved. He reflected on the morning's orchestrated chaos, the staged accidents, the moral dilemmas, and the subtle emotional challenges. All of it had been a lens through which he had glimpsed something far more valuable than compliance or efficiency. He had witnessed authenticity, resilience, and the enduring strength of human character. The mansion itself seemed to echo the sentiment, quiet now, peaceful, as if it had absorbed the revelations of the day. Jonathan watched Clara move about, still methodical, still composed, still embodying the qualities that had so impressed him. He realized that the true value of the day had not been in testing her skills, but in observing the unfiltered humanity that emerged naturally when someone acted without expectation, without performance and without pretense. He thought of the many people he had met in his life, some brilliant, some powerful, some wealthy beyond measure, but few had displayed what Clara had. Her integrity, empathy, and composure had been consistent, instinctive, undeniable. Jonathan felt a rare, profound respect, realizing that she had taught him more about human virtue in a single day than years of experience with influence and wealth could have provided. Clara, completing her final tasks, prepared to retire for the night. She reflected briefly on the events of the day, aware that it had been unusual, challenging, and unpredictable. Yet she had navigated it with calm and purpose, guided by principles she held deeply. She did not know the full extent of Jonathan's test, but she understood that her actions, guided by honesty and empathy, had been observed and appreciated. There was a quiet satisfaction in that realization, a sense that her efforts had mattered not just in completing tasks, but in exemplifying integrity and human decency. Jonathan finally rose from his seat and approached Clara once more. This time, his tone was lighter, but still filled with genuine appreciation. "Clara, I want you to know that today has shown me qualities that are rare in the world, qualities that cannot be taught or forced. Your honesty, your empathy, and your ability to stay composed under pressure are extraordinary. I am grateful to have witnessed it." Clara's face softened further, a humble smile forming. "Thank you, sir," she replied simply, her words sincere yet understated. She did not need praise, yet she understood that her actions had been acknowledged and valued. Jonathan felt that the day's purpose had been fulfilled. The experiment, the test, and the observations had all led to a clear truth. Clara was a person of rare character, and her authenticity had left an indelible impression. In the quiet moments that followed, Jonathan reflected on the broader lessons of the day. Money could buy comfort, influence, and control, but it could not replicate honesty or moral courage. Authority could enforce behavior, but it could not create integrity or authenticity. Clara's actions had demonstrated a consistency and depth of character that transcended circumstance, role, and expectation. She had acted with care, composure, and principle in every situation, revealing a human virtue that was both inspiring and humbling. The night deepened, and the mansion settled into a gentle, peaceful rhythm. Clara prepared for rest, having completed her duties with care and attention. Jonathan, watching her one last time, understood that the day had been transformative, not just in observing her character, in reaffirming his belief in the value of genuine human integrity. Her actions had reminded him that wealth and power are fleeting, virtue, empathy, and moral clarity endure. Finally, Jonathan allowed himself a quiet moment of gratitude. Clara's responses had revealed qualities that were rare, admirable, and profoundly human. Her honesty, composure, and empathy had illuminated the day in ways that money, status, or instruction never could. He understood that these qualities were invaluable, and he would carry the lessons learned from observing her with him always. The mansion, orchestrated tests, the moments of tension and unpredictability, they had all served to reveal the remarkable character of one extraordinary person. With a final nod of respect and appreciation, Jonathan knew the test was complete. Clara, unaware of the full scale of the experiment, had demonstrated the enduring value of authenticity, integrity, and empathy. The day had been a revelation, a reminder that human virtue cannot be manufactured, coerced, or performed. It emerges naturally, instinctively, and consistently in moments of moral and emotional significance. As the night enveloped the mansion, Jonathan finally allowed himself to rest. He reflected on the rare and profound qualities. Clara had revealed the composure under pressure, the unwavering integrity, the empathetic responses, and the thoughtful judgment. She had passed every challenge without hesitation, proving that character is measured not by circumstance, but by